The Republican House's attempt to gut ethics rules got lots of attention, leading to a dramatic backtracking when Congress was sworn in Tuesday. But Republicans pushed another plan into the rules package that did pass this week, a rule that gives Congress the power to directly target and cut salaries for individual agencies and employees separate from the annual budget process. Now, why is that important? Well, it means that even if there's general funding for, say, the Environmental Protection Agency, Congress then has extra power to come back around and cut money from specific parts of the EPA. Now, Republicans say there's nothing nefarious about targeted spending cuts. They note that while Congress hasn't had this power since the early 80s, it was used for decades at earlier points in history.
I think it gives us an opportunity really thinking about what this election was about, that they want to see change. And this is a big rule change inside there that allows people to get at places they hadn't before. And we put it in there to last for 1 year, and we'll look back at it again a year from now to see how well it worked in others. But it'll be a nice pilot program for change.
And sure, on paper, this is just a one-year option to target funding. But let's also connect the dots here in this Trump transition era. This rule comes right after reports that Trump's aides were specifically requesting names of people at the Energy Department who work on climate change, and separate reports that Trump aides also asked the State Department for details on jobs and programs that were specifically devoted to advancing gender equality. So if you combined one, a new rule that can cut salaries for specific workers, and two, new lists of employees working on issues like climate change or gender equality, you have the ingredients for a chilling effect on federal workers, or worse, for a purge. So to the rule makers getting all these ingredients together, please know, we see you. And this new rule still requires approval from the entire House and Senate to become operative. Joining us now for more context, Julian Epstein, a former chief minority counsel to the House Judiciary Committee, very experienced in these matters. What do you see happening here?
We'll talk about the gang that can't shoot straight, Ari. First, we have this week a Republican Congress that tries to exempt itself from the ethics rules. The very first thing it does. The second thing it does is to try to take us back to a very dark period in American history, the McCarthy era, where Congress could punish ordinary Americans if they didn't conform to the hardline views of the ruling party. In this case, it would be civil servants that wouldn't conform to the hardline views of the Republican Party.
So you're worried this rule could be abused to target federal workers?
That's the purpose of it. This goes back to its so-called Holman rule in the late 1800s. It's been tested. It's been declared unconstitutional as a bill of attainder by the federal courts. But that's exactly what could happen, Ari. So if at the Department of Energy, for example, the best climate scientists in the world issue a report on climate change that the new Secretary of Energy doesn't like, the Secretary of Energy, parenthetically, you couldn't even remember the name of the agency, or that hardliners on the Hill don't like, they could simply zero out all the salaries and punish the scientists for issuing a report telling us about the dangers of climate change. If, for example, the Republicans didn't like the fact that you've got civil servants working on women's rights at the State Department, international women's rights, what they could simply do is identify who's working on them and zero out all their salaries, punish them for their political views. It's an extremely dark, Putin-esque view of democracy and our democratic values, and it's been challenged. There was a case, and you're probably familiar with this, Ari, as an attorney, the Lovett case in 1943, where Congress did exactly this. They identified 39 federal employees who they didn't like their political views on, and they tried to fire them by zeroing out the salaries. The Supreme Court looked at it and they said, wait a second, Congress doesn't have that power. Congress can't punish people for their political views that happen to be federal employees by firing them or cutting out their salaries. Congress can't do it. It doesn't have the due process apparatus and to be able to do that. And these federal employees are entitled to due process. So this has been tested in the courts, and it's been declared unconstitutional. But if you think we're not getting back into that McCarthy era, as you pointed out at the outset of this segment, Ari, The Trump transition team has already started taking names. They've
Right.
started taking names of the climate scientists at Department of Energy. They started taking names of Department of State employees who are working on women's international rights. I mean, this is a
final
process that is
question, because
happening.
we're almost out of time.
Sure.
Do you view this on par with the ethics rule, and that citizens should try to press Congress on this? They have to hear about it?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't even know how to equate these two things. One rule which says Congress is going to exempt itself from ethics rules and can be free to engage in all kinds of unethical behavior with very few checks. That's awful for our democracy. Another rule which says Congress can punish people if they don't conform to the ideology, the strict hardline right extremist
Right.
views of the Republican Party, will punish you by taking away your jobs. That's a kind of a very dark throwback to the McCarthy era, as I said. That's equally troubling in terms of our democratic values. And this is just the strict constitutionalists, the people that said they believed in the Constitution, where are they now?
Julian Epstein, you get the last word on this topic. Thank you very much.